Hello everyone. This lecture series is brought to you by Raj Malhotra's IAS Institute, Chandigarh. By means of this lecture series, I, Ayush Gupta, will be covering up some of the major judgments of the Honorable Supreme Court and will understand its relation with the Indian polity. In our today's lecture, we are going to talk about the Berubari Union case of 1960. Along with it, we'll understand the power of secession of the territory of the country with which this case deals with, and along with it, we'll understand the reach of Articles 1, 2, 3 and 4 which are covered in Part 1 of the Constitution in the topic Union and its territories. Now, before we begin the lecture, let's see the 14 parts in which I have divided this lecture. You can have a cursory look over here of all the topics that I have divided this lecture into. Now, let's start with the first heading that we have, the Indian Independence Act of 1947. Now, by Indian Independence Act of 1947, independence was granted to India and Pakistan. This very act said that India was to be divided into two countries, one that of Pakistan and the other that of India. This very act also made provisions for the division of the provinces of Bengal and Punjab between India and Pakistan. According to this very act, a boundary commission was to be set up, and the award of this boundary commission will decide as to what parts of the province of Bengal will go to India and what parts will go to Pakistan, and in the same way what parts of Punjab would go to Pakistan and what parts will remain with India. However, if the Boundary Commission's award does not come before 15th August 1947, the date at which this act was to come into force, then it also made provision as to what all territories would stay with India and what all territories would go to Pakistan till such time that the award comes in. So, Schedule 1 of this very act specifies the territories, the districts of the province of Bengal, which would comprise of East Bengal, that would be part of Pakistan, and all the parts of the province of Bengal which are not written in Schedule 1 would have gone to India as per the Indian Independence Act of 1947. However, the Boundary Commission was formed on 30th June 1947 itself. This commission was chaired by Sir Cecil Radcliffe, and it gave its award on 12th of August 1947. So, 3 days prior to coming into effect of the Indian Independence Act, this award was given. Therefore, the territories which were divided in Schedule 1 of Indian Independence Act 1947 would have had no impact, and the actual division was to be as per the award of the Boundary Commission, which was given on 12th of August 1947. Now, after this award was given, there were certain disputes between India and Pakistan with respect to the border in the eastern sector and as well as other sectors also. So, it was decided by both the countries to resolve these disputes with respect to the border by establishing an Indo-Pakistan Boundaries Dispute Tribunal. This tribunal was to be headed by Honorable Lord Justice Algot Bache. So, the award of this tribunal is also known as the Bache Award of January 26, 1950. Now, let's come to the topic of Berubari Union. Now, Berubari Union at the time of independence constituted to be the part of Indian territory and not that of Pakistan. In the Indian Independence Act of 1947, the mention of Berubari Union was not made in Schedule 1, and if the division had to be according to 1947's Indian Independence Act, then also Berubari Union would have been part of India. Also, after the Radcliffe Award, the award given by the Boundary Commission, the disputes that were talked about in the Indo-Pakistan Boundaries Dispute Tribunal with respect to the boundary between Pakistan and India in the eastern sector, the topic of Berubari Union did not found mention. So, Pakistan also did not raise the issue of Berubari Union in this very at the time of the points which were to be dealt with by the Indo-Pakistan Boundaries Disputes Tribunal was settled. However, in 1952, Pakistan objected, and it said that the way the line was drawn as per the award, the Radcliffe Award, Berubari Union should have been part of Pakistan and not that of India. So, this very dispute hanged on for quite a while, and in 1958, ultimately, the Nehru-Noon Agreement took place. The foreign secretaries of Pakistan and India sat together and they came to an agreement with respect to certain border disputes. This agreement also had the issue of Berubari Union and along with it that of certain old Cooch Behar enclaves which were also disputed. So, Cooch Behar was a princely state and this very state acceded to India at the time of independence. Now, unlike other states, Cooch Behar was a tribal princely state, and which is why it had certain territories which were not part of its mainland. The certain territories were not as a contiguous part of its mainland. So, by means of this very agreement, which was then accepted by both the prime ministers of the country, the Berubari Union was to be divided horizontally and a part of it was to go to East Pakistan, and the enclaves of Cooch Behar which were adjacent to Berubari Union, there were about 4 enclaves, were to be also given to Pakistan, and India was to take nothing extra, no compensation against these Cooch Behar enclaves which were to be given to Pakistan. Now, Berubari Union had about 10,000 people as its population. So, it was decided by the government that so that in future there is no litigation with respect to this agreement, it was better to refer this agreement to the Supreme Court for its opinion and to see if this agreement can be executed by the government, by the Prime Minister himself or not. So, under Article 143 of the Constitution, the President can make a reference to the Supreme Court and seek the advice of Supreme Court on certain legal or factual issues. So, under Article 143(1), Supreme Court referred this agreement to the Supreme Court for its opinion. So, 3 questions were framed for the opinion of the Supreme Court. These 3 questions were: 1. Is any legislative action necessary for the implementation of the agreement relating to Berubari Union? क्या कोई कानून बनाने की ज़रूरत है in order to implement this agreement with respect to Berubari Union? Second, if so, is the law of Parliament relatable to Article 3 of the Constitution sufficient for the purposes, or is an amendment of the Constitution in accordance with Article 368 of the Constitution necessary, in addition or an alternative? Third question, is the law of Parliament relatable to Article 3 of the Constitution sufficient for implementation of the agreement relating to exchange of enclaves, or is an amendment of the Constitution in accordance with Article 368 of the Constitution necessary for the purpose, in addition or an alternative. So basically the question 2 and 3 are similar. Question 2 is with respect to giving of territory, certain part of territory of Berubari Union in the agreement to Pakistan, and question 3 deals with the giving of exchange of enclaves of Cooch Behar with Pakistan. Question 2 says that if a law has to be made in order to implement this agreement, should a law under Article 3 of the Constitution be sufficient, or there is a need of constitutional amendment under Article 368, or both are necessary, or is there a provision that either one of the things can be done by the government. The same question was asked with respect to exchange of enclaves. Now before we begin further, let's have a brief idea as to where Berubari Union is. Now I have taken out 3 maps. Although it might not give us the exact location of Berubari Union, still we will have some understanding of it. So this is the map of West Bengal. Over here we have the district of Cooch Behar. As I said, Cooch Behar was a princely state which acceded to India at the time of independence. So you can see at the very last we have Cooch Behar, and over here, somewhere over here, we have the territory of Berubari Union, which constituted as part of British India, which was also part of India till 1952 undisputedly. It was only after 1952 that the Berubari Union's territory's inclusion in India was disputed by Pakistan. Until then, from independence till 1952, Indian laws and everything applied over Berubari Union undisputedly. So we can see Cooch Behar is here, and Cooch Behar's certain enclaves, certain parts of the territories of Cooch Behar are like this. As I said, that it was a tribal state, and therefore it had territories other than, which were not contiguous, not joined with its main territory. So now let's have a look at the other map. So here is Berubari. As I said, this is the district of area of Cooch Behar, and just we saw in our earlier slide where I said the Berubari Union was somewhere here. So for further reference, you can see this is how Cooch Behar certain territories fell in Pakistan. You can see this is Cooch Behar. These areas in green were enclaves which were part of Cooch Behar, which after partition fell in Pakistan's territory, now Bangladesh, East Pakistan's territory, and there were certain enclaves of Pakistan that fell in India's territories. You can see the red ones. So this is why the border issue was so important, and there were so many disputes with respect to our eastern sector of the border. Now moving forward, now this reference was made to the Supreme Court. Now let us see the proceedings of the case of Berubari Union. Now in the during the proceedings of Berubari Union, the Attorney General of India first contended that no legal action was needed to implement, no law was needed to implement this very agreement, as this agreement formed part of the award, the Boundary Commission's award, which was the main award that was to decide between the territories of India and Pakistan. According to Attorney General, the agreement what the agreement did was to solve the dispute with respect to the boundary, and therefore there was no giving of the territory or no inclusion of the territory. It was just settling a dispute with respect to the boundary that was given under the award. So And with respect to Cooch Behar, it said that the giving of certain enclaves of Cooch Behar to Pakistan is incidental to settling of this dispute with respect to the boundary of Berubari Union. Upon this, the Supreme Court decided to take a look at the agreement. So, when Supreme Court took a look at the agreement, it observed that in this very agreement, nowhere had there been a mention of the award. The Supreme Court observed that this very agreement clearly stated that Berubari Union would be horizontally divided so as to maintain peaceful relations between both the countries. So this territory was to be horizontally divided between Pakistan and India. The Supreme Court said that had this agreement been a part of the award or in continuation of the award settling boundaries with respect to award, then this dispute should have been solved with respect to the manner it was given in the award. Now, what was the manner that was of division of territories that was given in award? Now, the Boundary Commission Award divided the territories on the basis of the locations of the police station. Suppose this is the entire territory of West Bengal. So there are various police stations in West Bengal. Now, when the territory has to be divided, the Boundary Commission had its reference as the thanas, and it drew lines from one thana to another. So, the Boundary Commission said that from Thana A we will draw a line to Thana B, from Thana B to C, from C to D, from D to E, and likewise. And this very part will form part of Pakistan and the other part will form part of India. The dispute that was raised by Pakistan was that when this line was drawn, this line was not correctly drawn. Supposedly this line was not drawn straight, however it was drawn like this, something like this might have happened, due to which a larger portion of territory went to India. However, what the agreement did was, supposedly this was Berubari Union. It said that divide this territory horizontally between both the countries. So, had the dispute been solved, had the agreement been solved in accordance with the award given by the Boundary Commission, then this division could not have been at all horizontal. So, which is why the court said that this agreement is not in continuation of the award and it is a separate agreement, altogether separate from the award. And therefore also, because this is the thing, the Cooch Behar enclaves, the exchange of Cooch Behar enclaves is also a separate issue and there will be a separate decision on it. It will not form part of, it will not be incidental to the settling of issue of Berubari Union. And hence, by taking force of the award, this agreement cannot be validated. The second argument that was given by the Attorney General was that the Parliament, that the executive had powers, executive government had power to secede territory of India under Article 253 and entry 14 or list 1 of the 7th schedule of the Constitution. So, list 1 comprises all the parts over which the union government can make laws, and according to entry 14 of list 1, the union government can enter into treaties, agreements with foreign countries. It can form part of associations, be part of associations. And Article 253 says that while doing this thing, if the Union of India happens to encroach upon any of the jurisdiction of the state, which is given under list 2 of the schedule 7th, then the state cannot have any objection and it will have to abide by it. Therefore, in this very respect, the executive, Attorney General said that the executive had power to give this territory of India to Pakistan. Over this, the Supreme Court observed that there is no doubt that the executive has power to enter into treaties, agreements, irrespective of the powers of the states. However, the executive had only that much power that is given by the Constitution. The power of the executive is qualified by the Constitution and it cannot exceed the powers given to it by the Constitution. And if that is the case, it has to amend the Constitution, only then it can do that thing. So, this very argument was subject to whether or not the Constitution provides for the executive to be able to take this decision or not. Apart from the Attorney General of India, Mr. Chatterjee, he was another lawyer, learned lawyer in this very case. He put forward two arguments. According to Mr. Chatterjee, the government of India did not have any power to secede any territory of the country. He says that the Constitution does not provide for any such manner in which the government of India can give away its territory to any other state. To support his contention, he based it on 2 points. Number one was the preamble of the Constitution. So Mr. Chatterjee said that the preamble reads that we the people of India solemnly constitute ourselves into a democratic republic. So according to Mr. Chatterjee, democratic republic form of government, the entire territory of India is beyond the reach of the parliament and cannot be affected either by ordinary legislation or even by constitutional amendment. Since we are a democratic republic, no territory of India can be ceded to any other country. The territory of India is made beyond the powers of the parliament. And why this was done? He argues that this was done because the harsh experience of the partition of the country, and by including democratic republic in the preamble, the constitution makers wanted to signify that in future they did not want to have any such division, and therefore they wanted to keep the power to divide India's territory outside of parliament. While addressing this argument of Mr. Chatterjee, the Honorable Supreme Court noted that by virtue of being a sovereign, every sovereign has the power to take up new territories and to give its territories in any agreement. These are some of the two important powers of a sovereign which is given to it in the international law. Secondly, the Supreme Court observed and gave reference to a thought of Willoughby, who was a legal scholar. So according to Willoughby, when he was observing American Constitution's preamble, he said, "It has never been regarded as the source of any substantive power conferred on the government of the United States or on any of its departments. Such powers embrace only those expressly granted in the body of the Constitution and such as may be implied from those so granted." Supreme Court observed, number one, that preamble does not provide for any power to the government. Preamble is non-justiciable on one point. So when preamble does not provide us with any powers, how can the preamble limit the power of the parliament? Secondly, it said that preamble is only to be used in case there is any confusion with respect to the interpretation of any of the articles of the constitution. That is the only purpose of the preamble, and therefore this argument of Mr. Chatterjee was nullified by the Honorable Supreme Court. The second argument which was given by Mr. Chatterjee was, he gave reference to Article 1 subclause 3C. So Article 1 talks about the union and its territories. It specifies all the territories which will form part of the union of the India. So according to Article 1, India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. The states and the territories thereof shall be as per specified in the first schedule. So first schedule is also part of Article 1. Under first schedule to the constitution, a description of all the territories of the country are given. The territory of India shall comprise the territories of the states, the union territories specified in the first schedule, and such other territories as may be acquired. So over here we will put emphasis on the C clause, such other territories as may be acquired. So according to Mr. Chatterjee, the Article 1 only talks about and makes a provision for India to acquire territories, and as per the rule of construction of expresso unis, just a second, as per the rule of construction of expresso unis est exclusio alteris, the Parliament does not have power to secede territory of India. So according to Mr. Chatterjee, Article 1 only talks about taking new territories in the fold of the country. As per this very construction, rule of construction, what happens is every issue has two sides, every coin has two faces. So according to Mr. Chatterjee and according to this rule of construction, if only one side is mentioned, then the other side, if it is not mentioned, it means it does not apply, it is not relevant. And therefore, if in Article 1 it is only mentioned that the union, that India can acquire territories in future, and it is not mentioned that it can also secede territories in future, it means that the constitution does not make provision for India to secede any territory. Over this, the Supreme Court observed that the analysis of Mr. Chatterjee of Article 1 clause 3C is entirely wrong. Honorable Supreme Court observes that C, when it says such other territories as may be acquired, does not mean that India has an expansionist tendency. Expansionist tendency का मतलब है कि और देशों के ऊपर जाके कब्जा करने के बारे में ये नहीं कहता. The Supreme Court said कि इसका मतलब ये भी हो सकता है that it is referring to those territories of India which are till now part of some other foreign power such as Puducherry, Goa, and it is just making a provision for the inclusion of those territories into the territories of India in future. So ये एक सिर्फ enabling section की तरह भी हो सकता है, जो कि जिसके थ्रू जब फ्यूचर में वो सारी टेरिटरीज जो अभी इंडियन यूनियन का पार्ट नहीं बन पाई हैं, अगर उन्हें फ्यूचर में बनाना होए तो इस वाले सेक्शन, इस वाले लॉ का, इस क्लॉज का यूज हो सकता है. Secondly, the Supreme Court also said that Article 368 of the Constitution gives the power to the Parliament to amend the Constitution of the country. So, अगर ऐसा कभी इन्विसेज ही नहीं किया कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन मेकर्स ने कि हम कभी पावर सेसीड भी कर सकते हैं, तो उस सिनेरियो में क्या होगा जब आर्टिकल 368 के तहत अगर हम आर्टिकल 1 को अमेंड ही कर दें तो. Therefore, this argument of Mr. Chatterjee was again nullified, and the Supreme Court held that neither the Constitution has provision for inclusion of territories, neither it expressly provides that we should go and take up new territories, nor it says expressly that we should secede our territories. The power to gain new territories and to secede your own territory, you have it by virtue of being a sovereign. So, in international law, a sovereign, by virtue of being sovereign, has the power to gain new territories and to secede its old territories. So, over here, these two arguments of Mr. Chatterjee were nullified. Moving forward, now the question that was in front of Supreme Court was whether a legislation is required in order to implement this agreement or not, and whether Constitution of India stipulates any barriers in implementation of this agreement, and how can those barriers be remedied. So, the Supreme Court proceeded then with the presumption that there was need of a legislation. So, the Attorney General at this stage said that okay, if there is a need of any legislation at all, then it is proposed by the government that an amendment to that a law may be passed under Article 3 of the Constitution, and no amendment should be required in order to give effect to this very agreement. So, the Supreme Court said that in order to see this, we have to see Article 3 in toto. So, before we analyze Article 3, we need to see Article 4. So, what Article 4 says? Article 4 says, if any law is made under Article 2 and 3 of the Constitution of India, an amendment to Schedule 1 and Schedule 4 as may be required is required to be done. Secondly, any law which is made in Article 1 and Article 2 and Article 3 of the Constitution would not require an amendment under Article 368. So, this is the very reason why Attorney General contended that if a legislation is required for implementation of this agreement, then let it be a legislation under Article 3, and let there be no requirement for an amendment under Article 368, because naturally if the government has to pass a legislation, it just needs the 50% majority mark. However, in case of an amendment, 50% majority plus votes of 2/3 members sitting and voting in the house are required. So, it is a much complex process. Let's have a look at Article 2 before we move on. So, Article 2 provides that Parliament may by law admit into the Union or establish new states on such terms and conditions as it thinks fit. This article shows that foreign territories which after acquisition would become a part of the territory of India under Article 13C can by law be admitted into the Union under Article 2. Such territories may be admitted into the Union or may be constituted into new states on such terms and conditions as Parliament may think fit, and as we shall presently point out, such territories can also be dealt with by a law under Article 3A or 3AB. So, the territories for which provision has been made in Article 13C, for the inclusion of which Article 13C that we saw earlier is been made, provision has been made under Article 2 or under Article 3, A and B. These territories can be included by law. The important word over here is in Article 2 and Article 3, you will see the word by law has been used, which means a law is necessity to be for these territories to be included. Without a legislation under Article 2 and under Article 3, you cannot include territories. So, over here, Article 2 now only talks about inclusion of territories. It does not talk about the secession of territories, giving away of the territories. Therefore, we will move on to Article 3, which was contended by the Attorney General that under Article 3 they be allowed to make a law so that this agreement could be approved. Let's have a look at Article 3 now. Formation of new states and alteration of areas, boundaries or names of existing states. Parliament may by law. Again, by law word has been used, which means there is a need for legislation. If new states need to be formed, or the boundaries of the states need to be altered, or names of the state has to be changed. So, Article 3 has 4 clauses. Clause A says, form a new state by separation of territory from any state or by uniting 2 or more states or parts of states or by uniting any territory to a part of any state. So Article 3A makes a provision for formation of new state. So how can a new state be created? So new state can be created by joining 2 states or by inclusion of any territory. For example, if a new territory is included, new territory over which India has gained control is included, so that territory can be included in the state's territory also. Does any territory under Article 3A cover union territories? Since any territory is a broad term, therefore under Article 3A, union territories will also be covered. Moving forward to Article 3B, increase the area of any state. 3C, diminish the area of any state. D, alter the boundaries of any state. So Article 3B and C and D talks about only state. Therefore 3B, C and D does not include union territories. So under Article 3B, the government can increase the area of any state. How will it increase? या तो वो किसी और state के अंदर से उसमें area डालेगी, या फिर बाहर से कोई जो territory आई उसके through आएगा. Diminish the area of any state, and 3 is alter the boundaries of the state. The Supreme Court, while interpreting this article, it said that while 3A is a separate thing, 3B and C now it is fine. So while in 3A a provision has been made for inclusion of any territory from outside and union territory for creation of a state, however in 3B it only talks about increase in the area of state and 3C diminish the area of state. अब increase कैसे होएगा किसी state का area? Naturally जब आप किसी दूसरी state के area के अंदर से ले लेंगे. So therefore 3B and C are interrelated. It was held by the Honorable Supreme Court. And as for D, again, alter the boundaries of any state. So while altering the boundaries of any state, what will happen? Some states will gain, some states will lose. Therefore, these 3 parts of Article 3 are interrelated. Let's see what Article 3E says. That to alter the name of any state, provided that no bill for the purpose shall be introduced in either house of the parliament except on the recommendation of the president, and unless where the proposal contained in the bill affects the area, boundaries and name of any of the states, the bill has been referred by the president to the legislature of that very state for expressing its views thereon within such period as may be specified in reference, or within such further period as the president may allow, and the period so be specified or allowed has expired. So 3E says that अगर आपको boundaries alter करनी है, name change करना है या area diminish करना है किसी भी state का, then president को वो जो law जिसके द्वारा ये किया जाएगा, he has to refer that law to the state legislature, concerned state legislature for their opinion, and उतने time में उन्हें वो अपने opinion president को देना है जितना time उनके लिए specify किया गया है. However, the president is not bound by this opinion of the concerned legislature. Over here you might be able to see these 2 explanations also. So for the time being I'll ask you not to have any look over these explanations, since these explanations to Article 13, Article 3 were added by 18th Amendment Act in 1966. However, at present we are talking about 1960. Therefore, now the Honorable Supreme Court said that Article asked Attorney General as to how under Article 3 can the territories of India be seceded. So, Attorney General placed reliance on 3C, diminish the area of any state. He said that by interpreting and giving a wide interpretation to this very part of Article 3, the Indian Union should be allowed to secede its territories. Over it, the Supreme Court observed that it did not find it appropriate to give an expanded definition, this sort of an expanded definition to 3C. While saying this, the Supreme Court gave two arguments. Number one, it says that when we read 3C, we get to know that it includes only states and it excludes union territories. Therefore, what will happen when a union territory has to be given away by the parliament? Supposedly एक union territory है और उस union territory को हम secede कर रहे हैं, किसी और state को दे रहे हैं, फिर उस scenario में क्या होगा? Naturally, Supreme Court said कि उस scenario में फिर हमें Article 368 के अंदर के थ्रू अमेंडमेंट करनी पड़ेगी आर्टिकल 1 के अंदर, जो कि इंडिया की सारी टेरिटरीज के बारे में हमें बताता है, एंड उसके बाद ही एक यूनियन टेरिटरी को हम किसी और देश को सेसीड कर पाएंगे. सो इस सिनेरियो में जहां हमें यूनियन टेरिटरी के लिए तो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल अमेंडमेंट करनी पड़ेगी, हाउ इज इट पॉसिबल कि एक स्टेट की किसी टेरिटरी को देने के लिए हमें कोई अमेंडमेंट ना करनी पड़े? सेकेंडली, the Honorable Supreme Court observed that when the constitution makers have not expressly provided for the power to expand India's territory in the constitution, it would be illogical and unnecessary to interpret the power to cede India's territory under Article 3C. As per the argument, the power to either expand India's territory or to cede India's territory is available with it by virtue of being a sovereign, and the constitution makers have not directly made any reference of this power in the constitution itself. And therefore, the only way to implement this Nehru-Noon agreement was through a constitutional amendment under Article 368 of Article 1 and Schedule 1 of the Constitution. इससे पहले ही हम ये चीज एक्सप्लेन कर चुके हैं दैट आर्टिकल 13C को जब सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने इस केस में इंटरप्रेट किया, देन इट सेड दैट आर्टिकल 13C डज नॉट मीन दैट इंडिया विल बी हैविंग एन एक्सपेंशनिस्ट व्यू. This article might have been added to the constitution in order to make an enabling provision so as to acquire all those Indian territories which at that very time, at the time of independence, was still dominion of any other colonial powers such as the Puducherry, Goa, etc. Now, another question would now arise that recently the union territory of Dadar and Nagar Haveli and Daman and Diu were merged by a legislation, by a law of the parliament under Article 3. Then how was that possible and why no constitutional amendment was done in that very case? So, moving a little back, we will see that in 1960 only 3A, B, C, D, E were part and a proviso were part of Article 3. However, by 18th Amendment Act in 1966, two explanations were added to Article 3. By means of these two explanations, the Union territory was read as part of A, B, C, D and E. In its first argument, while declining the inclusion of the power to cede India's territory under Article 3C, the Honorable Supreme Court said, जब 3C is not covering even Union territory, and in order to cede a union territory when we have to go and do a constitutional amendment, then how is it possible that a state's territory can be ceded under Article 3 when, and this is but natural because a state has a better status than that of a union territory, and therefore under Article 368 a constitutional amendment is necessary in order to cede any territory of the country. With this, we are done with our topic. For another instance and another example that we can take with respect to this very topic while concluding this lecture, would that be of 100th Constitutional Amendment Act. जैसे कि मैंने आपको शुरुआत में ही कहा था that the state of Cooch Behar was a tribal state and therefore it had a number of territories which were not contiguous with its mainland. So by 100th Constitutional Amendment Act, enclaves were exchanged between India and Bangladesh. You can see over here, this is the state of Cooch Behar, the erstwhile state of Cooch Behar, now a part of West Bengal as a district. And these are various enclaves in green which are falling in the territory of Bangladesh, which were part of it, and therefore the inhabitants of these territories which were encircled by Bangladesh were actually Indian. In a similar fashion, these enclaves in red which are falling in the Indian territory were part of Pakistan, erstwhile Pakistan, East Pakistan, now Bengal. By means of Constitutional 100th Amendment Act, about 100 Indian enclaves in Bangladesh were given to Bangladesh and about 51 Bangladeshi enclaves in India were taken by India. Therefore, in this very manner, when we do the net sum of this, India was actually giving some territory, ceding some territory to Bangladesh, which necessitated a constitutional amendment, and therefore 100th Constitutional Amendment was done. In this very manner, we have covered this very part and we have seen how and why it is necessary so as to do a constitutional amendment in order to cede an Indian territory. Should you have any doubts with respect to this lecture, feel free to comment in the comment box down. I will be more than happy to reply to you. Thank you and have a nice day.